Eloria stood at the edge of the desolate landscape of her home planet, a forgotten realm cloaked in shades of gray and dust. The sun, a distant and feeble star, cast elongated shadows across the cracked earth, illuminating the remnants of a once thriving civilization that had succumbed to neglect and decay. The air was thick with the scent of rust and despair, and the only sounds were the whispers of the wind and the distant echoes of long-lost dreams. It was a place where hope had dwindled. Yet Eloria felt a flicker of something deep within her, a yearning that had been buried beneath layers of obscurity. As she made her way through the ruins of an ancient city, her keen eyes scanned the ground, searching for remnants of a past that seemed to elude her. It was here, in the heart of this wasteland, that she stumbled upon something extraordinary. Half buried in the dirt and debris lay an ancient relic, its surface adorned with intricate symbols that pulsated faintly with a golden light. The moment her fingers grazed the cool metal, a surge of energy coursed through her, igniting dormant powers within her that she had never known existed. The relic was unlike anything she had ever seen, a combination of beauty and mystery that beckoned her to uncover its secrets. As she lifted it from the ground, the light intensified, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. She could feel the pulse of the relic synchronizing with the rhythm of her heart, awakening something primal and powerful. Visions danced in her mind, flickering images of a regal past, of a lineage steeped in glory and authority. Eloria saw herself adorned in royal garments, a crown resting upon her brow, commanding legions of followers who revered her. The visions were fleeting, but they ignited a flame of determination within her soul. In that moment of discovery, Eloria realized that she was not just a nameless girl wandering through the ashes of her home. She was a beacon of potential, a descendant of a line that had once ruled with wisdom and strength. The relic was a key, a tangible connection to her heritage, and it whispered promises of power and vengeance against the Galactic Council that had cast her family into the shadows. The Council had forgotten her, but she would not forget them. Eloria vowed to reclaim her rightful place and to rise from the depths of obscurity. Meanwhile, far beyond the barren expanse of her home planet, the Galactic Council convened in their opulent chambers, oblivious to the awakening of a force that would soon challenge their dominion. Dressed in robes of authority that flowed like liquid night, the council members discussed matters of insignificance, their voices echoing through the grand hall. They were detached from the realities of the universe, focused solely on maintaining their power and squashing any hint of dissent. Reports of unrest on Eloria's planet filtered in, but they dismissed the concerns as trivial. To them, the struggles of a forgotten world were merely footnotes in the grand narrative of their reign. The council members reveled in their ignorance, unaware that a storm was brewing in the depths of the cosmos. They were fixated on their own ambitions, blind to the potential uprising that was taking form. Eloria's determination would soon shake the very foundations of their authority, but for now, they remained comfortably ensconced in their high towers, enjoying the fruits of their tyranny. As the council discussed their plans, Eloria stood alone in the ruins, the relic clutched tightly in her hands. The glow of its light illuminated her face, casting an ethereal aura around her. She felt a sense of purpose surging through her veins, a calling that transcended the boundaries of her past. The memories of her family, of her mother's wisdom and her father's courage, surged to the forefront of her mind. They had been wronged, their legacy tarnished by the very council that now dismissed her existence. Eloria's heart raced as the weight of her destiny settled upon her shoulders. She could not be just a remnant of the past. She had to become a force of change. The relic was an artifact of her lineage, and it was time to harness its power. Driven by a newfound sense of purpose, she made her way back to her hidden sanctuary, a dilapidated structure that had once served as a home for her family. It was a place filled with echoes of laughter and warmth, now shrouded in sadness and neglect. Inside, she began to study the relic, tracing her fingers over the intricate symbols that adorned its surface. Eloria felt a connection to the past, as if the relic itself was guiding her to unlock its secrets. Hours turned into days as she pored over ancient texts, deciphering the language of her ancestors and learning about the powers that lay dormant within her. With each passing moment, She felt the energy of the relic intertwining with her essence, awakening abilities she had never imagined she possessed. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Aloria stood before a mirror, her reflection revealing a woman transformed. The flicker of determination burned brightly in her eyes, now shining with an intensity that spoke of her royal lineage. She was no longer a mere girl. She was Aloria, the Solar Queen, and she would not be forgotten. With a resolve that resonated deep within her, Aloria set out to gather a band of outcasts, individuals who had been cast aside by society, just as she had been. She knew she could not embark on this journey alone. Each person she sought would bring their unique skills and experiences, forming an alliance that could challenge the Galactic Council. The streets of her planet were filled with those who had suffered under the weight of oppression, and Aloria would be their beacon of hope. Her first recruit was Marek, a skilled pilot whose talents were matched only by his yearning for freedom. He had spent years navigating the treacherous skies, evading the scrutiny of the Council and dreaming of a life beyond the confines of his existence. Aloria found him in a hidden enclave, surrounded by the remnants of discarded ships and the scent of engine oil. His eyes, sharp and calculating, met hers with curiosity as she laid out her vision. Next, she sought Lyra, a brilliant engineer known for her ingenuity and resourcefulness. Lyra had a reputation for breathing new life into old machines, and Aloria knew she would be invaluable to their cause. The two met in a workshop filled with the hum of machinery and the smell of burnt metal, where Lyra was tinkering with an ancient device. Aloria's passion sparked a fire in Lyra's heart, igniting a desire to fight against the injustice that had plagued their lives. Finally, Aloria turned to Jax, a former soldier with a haunted past. He had fought for the Council, but the weight of his actions had left him disillusioned and yearning for redemption. Aloria saw the conflict within him, the struggle between loyalty and the desire for justice. She approached him with a fierce determination, knowing that his combat skills would be essential in the battles to come. Together, they formed a ragtag crew of misfits, united by a shared longing for freedom and justice. Their first task was to steal the Luminary, a ship hidden away in a forgotten hangar, a vessel that would grant them the means to escape their planet and confront the Galactic Council head-on. Aloria felt the weight of their collective dreams resting on her shoulders, but she welcomed the challenge. As they made their way toward the hangar, the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, a celestial reminder of the vast universe that awaited them. Aloria's heart raced with anticipation, her mind racing with visions of the future that lay ahead. She was no longer a forgotten girl, she was the Solar Queen, and her journey to reclaim her destiny had just begun. Navigating through the asteroid belt was a precarious challenge that tested not just the skills of Marek, the pilot, but also the resolve of the entire crew aboard the Luminary. The ship trembled under the constant barrage of gravitational pulls and rogue asteroids, each bump reverberating through the hull like a warning bell. Aloria stood at the command console, her heart pounding, eyes focused on the swirling mass of rock and debris that surrounded them. She could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut, as uncertainty gnawed at her crew. For the first time since they had embarked on this journey, Aloria sensed a flicker of doubt in their unity. As Marek maneuvered the ship with deft precision, his hands danced over the controls, each tug and slide a testament to his piloting prowess. Aloria watched him closely, noting the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his jaw clenched as he navigated the Luminary through the narrow passages between colossal asteroids. Aloria's breath caught in her throat as a massive rock hurtled toward them, but Marek reacted in the nick of time, the ship veering sharply to the left, narrowly avoiding disaster. She could see the tension in the muscles of his arms, the sweat beading on his forehead, but he pressed on, eyes locked ahead, unwavering. The crew was restless. Lyra, the engineer, fidgeted with the tools at her station, her fingers tapping anxiously against the metal surface. Jack stood nearby, arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he observed Marek's maneuvers. There was a palpable divide forming in the ship, and Aloria felt the weight of their collective anxiety pressing down on her. She had taken on the mantle of leadership, but now that role was being scrutinized. Some crew members whispered doubts under their breath, questioning whether she was truly the right person to lead them through this treacherous trial. Aloria sensed the rising tension and felt the need to assert her authority, yet she hesitated, unsure of how to address their concerns without escalating the situation. The luminary lurched again, and Marek's voice, strained but steady, cut through the air. He was focused, his instincts driving him to navigate their path with the utmost care. Aloria knew that the crew needed confidence to rally around, but her own uncertainties loomed large. She felt the burden of her royal lineage pressing heavily upon her shoulders. Would they follow her? Did they believe in her vision? As they plunged deeper into the asteroid belt, the ship rocked violently, the sound of metal groaning reverberating through the cabin. Marek's voice pierced the tension, urging the crew to hold on tight. Aloria caught a glimpse of his fierce determination, and just for a moment, she felt a surge of hope. Perhaps if she could channel that energy, inspire them with the same tenacity he exhibited, they would find their footing once more. With a deep breath, Aloria stepped closer to Marek, her presence a steadying influence in the chaos. She pointed to their path, her voice resolute, guiding him toward an opening she had spotted among the debris. Marek's eyes flicked to hers, and in that brief exchange, a silent understanding passed between them. He adjusted the ship's trajectory, and they surged forward, the luminary slicing through the dense field of asteroids. The moment they broke free from the belt, the crew erupted into a chorus of relieved breaths and murmurs of disbelief. They had survived the first real challenge of their journey, and as the stars stretched out before them, Aloria felt a glimmer of victory. Marek's skill had saved them, but it was her leadership that had steered them through the storm. She realized that despite her insecurities, she had the ability to inspire and mobilize her crew. A sense of camaraderie began to form, and Aloria took a moment to gather her thoughts before they pressed on. The crew had faced their fears and emerged stronger. Yet as they sailed into the vastness of space, their next challenge awaited. As they floated through the galaxy, the luminary came across a derelict spaceship, adrift in the void. The sight of it stirred a mix of curiosity and apprehension within the crew. It was a ghost of a vessel, its once proud structure now battered and worn, a testament to a battle long forgotten. Aloria felt a pull towards it, a sense that it held secrets worth uncovering. They had narrowly escaped the asteroid belt, and now, the promise of technology and resources lay within their grasp. Lyra was the first to express interest, her eyes alight with the possibilities of salvaging valuable components. They docked with the derelict ship, the air thick with anticipation, as Aloria led the crew through the airlock and into the darkened interior. The atmosphere shifted, the silence almost oppressive as they stepped into the unknown. Shadows clung to the corners, and the faint hum of machinery echoed in the distance. As they moved deeper into the ship, Lyra's excitement bubbled to the surface. She began to examine the control panels and machinery strewn about, her fingers deftly assessing their condition. The crew spread out, searching for anything of value, but Aloria remained vigilant. There was an unsettling feeling in the pit of her stomach, a sense that something was amiss. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its door sealed tightly. Lyra worked quickly, her mind racing as she bypassed the security protocols. Just as the door slid open with a hiss, a sudden alarm blared, piercing through the silence. Panic set in as the crew scrambled back, their instincts screaming that they had triggered something deadly. Aloria's heart raced. She shouted for everyone to retreat, but the trap had been set. A surge of energy crackled in the air, and the room erupted into chaos. Jax instinctively reached for Lyra, pulling her back just as a wave of energy surged through the chamber. The force knocked them all to the ground, the ship trembling around them. Aloria shielded her eyes, the blinding light momentarily debilitating. When the chaos subsided, they found themselves shaken but alive. Lyra had managed to salvage several pieces of advanced technology from the wreckage, her eyes gleaming with triumph despite the near brush with death. Aloria took a moment to collect herself, recognizing that the danger they had faced had bound them closer together. They had survived the ordeal, and in that survival, there was a new bond, a shared experience that would define their journey moving forward. As they regrouped aboard the luminary, the atmosphere shifted once more, this time infused with a sense of purpose. They had faced the unknown and emerged stronger, and now they were ready to set their course toward the Galactic Council's headquarters. Aloria gathered the crew in the main chamber, her heart pounding with anticipation. She could feel the weight of their collective hopes resting on her shoulders, and she was determined to lead them toward their destiny. With the newly acquired technology in hand, Aloria prepared to share her plan. It was time to expose the corruption of the Galactic Council, to reveal the truth that had been buried beneath layers of deceit. But as she looked around at the faces of her crew, she could sense the apprehension lingering in the air. Some were eager for action, while others cast wary glances, haunted by the potential consequences of their choices. Aloria took a deep breath, steeling herself for the debate that was about to unfold. She could feel the tension build as they weighed the risks against the rewards, each member of the crew grappling with their own fears and hopes. The Luminary, now more than just a ship, had become a vessel of dreams and aspirations, and Aloria was determined to steer them toward a future where they could reclaim their place in the galaxy. The journey ahead would not be easy, but together, they had forged a bond that would carry them through the trials to come. In that moment, Aloria understood the profound weight of her role as their leader. She was not just guiding them through the stars, she was igniting a flame of resistance, a beacon of hope in a galaxy shrouded in darkness. The Luminary glided into the bustling spaceport of Varkon Prime, its hull glinting under the array of neon lights that adorned the sprawling station. Aloria stood at the ship's entrance, her heart pounding with anticipation and trepidation. The spaceport was a hive of activity, filled with traders, smugglers, and adventurers, all drawn to the promise of wealth and freedom among the stars. As the crew disembarked, Aloria felt the weight of her mission pressing against her chest. This was not merely a stop along their journey. It was a stepping stone toward her destiny. The air was thick with a medley of scents, spices, engine grease, and the faint metallic tang of ozone. Aloria took a moment to absorb her surroundings, the vibrant chaos igniting a spark of determination within her. She had come to gather intel on the Galactic Council, the nameless faces that had betrayed her family and plunged her into obscurity. Every individual she saw was a potential ally or enemy in her quest for vengeance. Marek, Lyra, and Jax fanned out around her, each drawn into the thrumming heartbeat of the port. Marek, ever the vigilant pilot, scanned the crowd with a discerning eye, while Lyra's fingers twitched with the desire to tinker with any piece of technology that caught her interest. Jax, however, seemed lost in thought, the shadows of his past flickering behind his eyes. They navigated through the throngs of people, the noise enveloping them like a thick fog. Vendors hawked their wares, their voices rising and falling in a cacophony of sales pitches. Aloria led her crew toward a dimly lit corner of the spaceport, where a series of holographic displays flickered with news feeds and information. She approached a terminal, her fingers dancing deftly over the screen as she searched for any mention of the council. As the information streamed in, Aloria's pulse quickened. Each report indicated that the council was tightening its grip on the galaxy, quelling dissent with an iron fist. They were fortifying their defenses, and rumors of a new weapon capable of mass destruction began to surface. The thought of her family's betrayal at the hands of these tyrants fueled her desire for revenge, her heart simmering with a potent mix of anger and determination. The council had left a scar on her life, and she would make them pay. Aloria's focus shifted as a particular news feed caught her attention. It detailed a high-ranking official's fall from grace, an apparent whistleblower who had dared to speak against the council. As she read, an overwhelming sense of urgency washed over her. She needed to find this individual, to extract information that could tip the scales in her favor. While Aloria absorbed the information, she felt a presence at her side. Jax stood, arms crossed, a conflicted expression etched on his face. She could sense the tension radiating from him, the weight of secrets lingering in the air between them. Aloria's instincts screamed at her to confront him, to demand the truth he had kept hidden since their journey began. As if sensing her gaze, Jax turned to her, his eyes a storm of emotions. The shadows of his past loomed large, and Aloria wondered how deep they ran. But before she could voice her questions, Marek interrupted, his voice filled with excitement as he pointed toward a news bulletin. Another report detailed the council's increasing paranoia, suggesting that they were actively hunting for dissidents, their fear becoming palpable across the galaxy. With a shared resolve, the crew began to formulate their next steps. Eloria felt the pull of destiny urging her forward. They had to act quickly, to gather allies and expose the Council's corruption before they could consolidate their power any further. Each passing moment brought them closer to the precipice of a larger conflict. She could feel it in her bones. As night descended upon Varkon Prime, the spaceport transformed. The bright neon lights shone more vibrantly against the backdrop of the darkened sky, casting a kaleidoscope of colors onto the faces of those who wandered the stalls. Eloria felt the energy of the crowd pulsating beneath her skin, an intoxicating mixture of hope and desperation. She surveyed the sea of faces, knowing that among them lay individuals who had suffered at the hands of the Council, just as she had. At that moment, she made a decision. They would seek out the disenfranchised, the outcasts, and the rebels who dared to oppose the Council. They would form a coalition of the wronged, a united front against the tyranny that had taken root in their lives. With her companions by her side, Eloria felt an unshakable sense of purpose begin to solidify within her. The crew split into pairs, their mission clear. Eloria partnered with Lyra, whose technical prowess could provide valuable insights into the Council's operations. As they moved through the dimly lit market, Eloria couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shadows of suspicion seemed to cling to them, growing thicker with each step they took. Lyra's curiosity led them to a back alley, where a group of rough-looking individuals huddled around a flickering holographic projector. The images displayed were of recent council meetings, their clandestine discussions laid bare for the world to see. Eloria's pulse quickened as she realized the potential for information, for leverage against the Council. But just as they approached, a voice broke through the murmur of the crowd, low and threatening. Eloria's heart sank as she recognized the insignia of the Council's enforcers emblazoned on the jackets of several figures, approaching from the opposite end of the alley. Panic surged through her veins, the very embodiment of her fears materializing before her. Eloria exchanged a glance with Lyra, and without exchanging words, they knew they had to retreat. They slipped back into the crowd, adrenaline coursing through them as they maneuvered through the throng. The spaceport, once a vibrant tapestry of life, now felt like a labyrinth of danger, every corner fraught with peril. As they regrouped with Merrick and Jax, Eloria's heart raced with the realization of how close they had come to being captured. The Council's reach was indeed extensive, and the stakes had never been higher. The burden of her mission weighed heavily on her shoulders. She could no longer afford to be a mere pawn in this game. In the safety of the Luminary, Eloria felt the familiar sense of camaraderie envelop her. They were bound by a shared purpose, a desire to dismantle the oppressive forces that had shaped their lives. She looked at each of her crew members, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the ship's control panel. Merrick's determination, Lyra's ingenuity, and Jax's hidden resolve melded into an unbreakable bond. As they plotted their next move, Eloria's thoughts drifted to the past, memories of her family and the betrayal that had turned her world upside down. It was a darkness she could not escape, a specter that haunted her every step. But now, she had a chance to rewrite her story, to reclaim her lineage and forge a new path. In the depths of her being, Eloria felt her powers stirring, a flicker of energy that resonated with her emotions. She had always sensed something different within herself, a connection to the forces of the universe that was both exhilarating and terrifying. With each passing moment, she could feel her abilities growing stronger, as if the universe itself was guiding her forward. As the crew prepared for their next steps, Eloria resolved to harness this power. She would not only seek vengeance, but also become a beacon of hope for those who had suffered under the Council's tyranny. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but she was ready to face whatever challenges awaited her. The shadows of her past would not define her. Rather, they would fuel her ascent to become the ruler she was destined to be. The luminary hummed softly in the shadows of the dimly lit hangar, the anticipation of confrontation thickening the air among the crew. Eloria stood at the helm, her brow furrowed as she reviewed the myriad of holographic displays flickering before her. Each screen blinked warnings and updates, painting a dire picture of their current predicament. The Galactic Council, now aware of her existence and the threat she posed, had dispatched an elite squad to hunt her down. The weight of her past and the urgency of her mission pressed heavily on her shoulders. It was more than just her life at stake. It was the fate of the galaxy. With a swift motion, she turned to her crew, who were scattered throughout the ship, each absorbed in their tasks. Merrick was recalibrating the ship's weapon systems, his hands moving with a dexterity honed by years of piloting. Lyra was deep in the engineering bay, her voice a steady drone as she ran diagnostics on the ship's engines, ensuring they could withstand an impending assault. Jax, the former council enforcer, was monitoring communications, his expression a blend of determination and trepidation. Trust was a fragile thing, and the crew was still grappling with the shadows of his past. The tension in the luminary was palpable. Eloria could feel the unease radiating from her crew, each of them wrestling with their own fears. She took a deep breath, centering herself amidst the chaos. She had come too far to falter now. The legacy of her family, the betrayal she had endured, and the power she was beginning to understand were all intertwined in this moment. She had to lead them, to show them that they were more than just a group of misfits thrown together by circumstance. They were a force to be reckoned with. As she moved through the ship, Eloria's thoughts drifted to the mysterious message she had received from a rogue council member. The offer had been enticing, information in exchange for her allegiance. It was a tempting proposition, the chance to gain insight into the council's plans and to exploit their weaknesses. But the council was a nest of vipers, and aligning herself with one of their own felt like a betrayal of everything she stood for. Rejecting the offer had been a difficult decision, but necessary. She could not waver in her purpose. Not now. The ship's sensors suddenly blared an alert, breaking her reverie. Eloria rushed to Merrick's side, her heart racing. The display showed blips approaching fast, their trajectory unmistakably aimed at the luminary. They had found her. The council's elite squad was closing in, and the time for preparation was over. She could see Marik's jaw tighten as he initiated evasive maneuvers, the ship shuddering slightly as he engaged the thrusters. "Steady," Eloria murmured, her voice low and steady. She felt a surge of energy within her, a flicker of the powers she was still learning to control. She focused on the task at hand, channeling her growing abilities into a sense of calm for her crew. They needed to work as a unit, to trust one another. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, and failure was not an option. The luminary shuddered again as the first shots rang out, cutting through the void of space. Merrick expertly dodged the incoming fire, his instincts sharp as he weaved the ship in and out of danger. Eloria could see the enemy vessels on the display now, sleek and menacing. They were the epitome of council might. Each one was manned by elite soldiers trained to hunt and kill without mercy. Eloria's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain composed. This was her moment to shine. She moved toward the weapons console, her hands hovering over the control panel. With a focused thought, she began to draw upon her energy, feeling it course through her veins. The ship's weapon systems responded to her intent, powering up at her command. She could feel the pulse of the luminary beneath her fingertips, a connection that transcended the physical. It was almost as if the ship was alive, responding to her will. As Marik continued his evasive maneuvers, Eloria unleashed a volley of energy bolts toward the approaching squadron. The bolts streaked through space, striking one of the enemy ships with a satisfying explosion. She felt a rush of exhilaration, a heady mix of power and purpose. This was her fight. With each shot that landed, she could feel her confidence growing, her resolve hardening. They were not just prey, they were warriors. The battle intensified, and the luminary danced through the chaos of the battlefield. Marik's piloting was deft, each turn calculated and precise. Eloria worked in tandem with him, her energy blasts illuminating the dark void like fireworks. They struck with a ferocity that surprised even her, each explosion a testament to her burgeoning power and the strength of their bond. But the elite squad was relentless, their numbers overwhelming. Eloria could see the damage accumulating on the luminary's shields, the warning lights flickering ominously. They needed to find a way to turn the tide. With a deep breath, she reached deeper within herself, tapping into the well of energy that had awakened within her. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, centering her focus, feeling the energies around her coalesce into a form she could manipulate. The next moment, she opened her eyes, and her gaze locked onto the approaching ships. With a fierce determination, she unleashed a wave of energy that rippled through space, cascading outward toward the enemy. The shockwave caught the squadron off guard, forcing several ships to veer off course. The luminary shook under the strain of her power, but Aloria held firm, feeling the exhilaration of wielding her newfound abilities. Marek seized the opportunity, steering the ship into a strategic position while Lyra worked frantically at the engineering bay, reinforcing the shields to withstand the backlash. The synergy between them was palpable. They were no longer just a crew but a well-oiled machine working in harmony against the threat that loomed over them. The battle raged on, each moment stretching into eternity as they fought against the odds. Aloria's powers surged, and with each pulse of energy she released, she felt the weight of her purpose solidify. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to reclaim their place in the galaxy. The Council's grip had to be broken, and she would be the one to do it. Despite their efforts, the relentless assault from the elite squad began to take its toll. The luminary shuddered under the impacts, and the alarms blared more urgently as the hull began to breach. Marek's voice rang out, steady and resolute, though Aloria could sense the strain in his tone. They needed to retreat, to regroup and rethink their strategy. But retreating felt like admitting defeat, and Aloria's heart rebelled against the notion. Just as the situation seemed to spiral out of control, a sudden explosion rocked the enemy formation. Aloria's gaze darted to the display, where a new ship had entered the fray. It was massive, its hull gleaming with the insignia of a rebel faction she recognized. A surge of hope ignited within her. Allies had arrived. The tide of the battle shifted as the newly arrived ship engaged the elite squadron, drawing their fire and giving Marek and Aloria the opening they desperately needed. They pushed the luminary forward, leveraging the distraction to escape the worst of the assault. Aloria could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, a mixture of fear and exhilaration as they navigated through the chaos. With Marek's expertise, they executed a series of sharp turns, weaving through the fray as they made their escape. The luminary shot away from the battlefield, the sounds of war fading behind them. Aloria leaned back in her seat, heart racing, the weight of the encounter crashing over her. They had survived, but the threat of the Council still loomed large. As they entered the relative safety of the space between stars, Aloria's heart began to slow. She exchanged glances with her crew, the silent understanding passing between them. They had faced the Council's wrath and emerged stronger, but the battle was far from over. The fight for the galaxy was just beginning. With the promise of newfound alliances on the horizon, Aloria felt a flicker of hope igniting within her, a beacon guiding her toward her ultimate destiny. The luminary drifted silently in the shadow of a remote moon, its sleek form cloaked by the dense cover of the surrounding forest. Aloria gazed out from the ship's viewport, her heart pounding with the weight of uncertainty and the burden of responsibility. After the harrowing battle with the elite squad, the crew had desperately sought refuge, and now they had found it among a group of rebels who shared their grievances against the Galactic Council. It was a precarious alliance, one that could either bolster their cause or lead to their undoing. As the crew disembarked from the luminary, they were greeted by the rebels, a ragtag group of individuals who bore the scars of conflict. Their faces were etched with fatigue, but their eyes sparkled with a fierce determination. They had gathered in a makeshift command center, nestled within the remnants of an ancient structure, its walls adorned with faded murals depicting a time when the galaxy thrived under the rule of a benevolent monarchy. Aloria felt a strange connection to the art, an echo of her royal lineage stirring within her. She understood now that her path was intertwined with that of these rebels. They were all victims of the Council's tyranny. In the center of the room, a holographic projector flickered to life, casting blue light over the assembled rebels and the crew of the luminary. Aloria stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. As she surveyed the faces around her, she felt a swell of purpose. This was her moment to rally the forces against their common enemy. She began to recount their story, the betrayal of her family, the unjust persecution, and the insatiable greed that drove the council to crush any opposition. With each word, she ignited a fire in the hearts of those who listened, binding them together in a shared vision of liberation. Amidst the fervor of the meeting, however, an undercurrent of tension lurked. Jax, whose loyalty had been questioned before, stood at the edge of the gathering, his expression unreadable. Aeloria caught his eye, and a flicker of doubt flashed through her mind. Could he be trusted? The memories of his past as an enforcer for the council gnawed at her, threatening to unravel the fragile trust they had built. Yet, he had fought alongside them. He had risked his life during their escape. Still, the specter of betrayal loomed large, casting a shadow over the hope she had ignited. As the meeting progressed, Aeloria found herself torn. Jax approached her with an offer that made her pulse quicken. He proposed to infiltrate the council's ranks, to gather intelligence that could turn the tide in their favor. The idea was tempting. It could provide them with crucial information about the council's plans, perhaps even about the secret weapon that had been whispered of in the shadows. But with every word he spoke, a part of her recoiled. Trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered, and the stakes were higher than ever. The rebels debated the merits of Jax's proposal, some eager to seize the opportunity, while others voiced their concerns. Aeloria listened intently, her mind racing. Could she afford to gamble on Jax's loyalty? The thought of him betraying them again, of him delivering her right into the hands of the council, sent chills down her spine. Yet the knowledge he possessed could be invaluable. The council had a history of ruthlessness, and Aeloria knew that time was not on their side. With each passing moment, the threat of the council's secret weapon loomed larger, pressing her to make a decision. In the days that followed, tensions within the camp escalated. The crew and the rebels moved about their tasks. But an invisible line divided them. A rift bred from suspicion and fear. Aeloria felt the weight of leadership heavy upon her shoulders. Nights were spent poring over maps and reports, while days were filled with training and strategy sessions. She sought to unite the disparate factions, to forge a collective identity that could withstand the council's impending assault. Yet, every time she met Jax's gaze, uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Aeloria found herself wandering through the moon's dense forests, seeking solace in solitude. The air was cool, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead. She paused, closing her eyes, allowing the sounds of nature to wash over her. In that moment, she could almost feel the presence of her ancestors, guiding her, urging her to embrace her destiny. Aeloria inhaled deeply, the scent of damp earth and pine filling her senses. She was not just Aeloria, the outcast. She was Aeloria, the Solar Queen, destined to rise against the darkness. With renewed determination, she returned to the rebel base. Aeloria gathered the crew and the rebels, resolute in her decision. They would confront the council together, armed with whatever information Jax could provide. She sensed the unease in the air, the lingering doubts, but she spoke with conviction, igniting a flicker of hope in the hearts of those gathered. Days turned into a blur of preparations. Jax was sent on his mission, cloaked in the guise of loyalty, while Aeloria and the crew worked tirelessly to fortify their defenses. They trained fiercely, honing their skills, determined to be ready for whatever the council would throw at them. But as the hours passed, a sense of dread settled in the pit of her stomach. Would they be ready in time? Would Jax return with the information they needed? Or would he lead them into a trap? The tension reached a breaking point during a tense meeting, when Aeloria learned of a secret council weapon capable of planetary destruction. It was a revelation that shook her to her core, a reminder of the stakes at play. The council was not merely a corrupt governing body. They were a malignant force, willing to annihilate entire worlds to maintain their grip on power. Aeloria's heart raced with the gravity of that knowledge. They had to act quickly, she thought, before it was too late. The room fell silent as she shared her discovery with the crew and rebels. Fear mingled with determination as the weight of their mission settled upon them. Aeloria felt an urgency pulsing through her veins. This was not just a fight for revenge. This was a fight for the very soul of the galaxy. United, They could dismantle the Council's reign of terror and restore peace to the stars. As plans were set in motion, Eloria could sense the shift in the atmosphere. The rebels rallied around her, their shared purpose igniting a fierce resolve. She could see it in their eyes, the belief that they could make a difference, that together they could stand against the darkness. Eloria knew that the path ahead would be fraught with peril, but she also knew that they had something powerful on their side: hope. In the days that followed, the crew and rebels prepared for the imminent confrontation with the Council. They forged alliances, strategized their approach, and fortified their base. Eloria felt the weight of her lineage, her ancestral legacy pressing upon her as she took on the mantle of leadership. She was no longer merely driven by vengeance. She was fueled by the desire to liberate the oppressed and to forge a brighter future for all. As the moon hung heavy in the night sky, Eloria stood at the helm of the luminary, gazing into the vast expanse of space. The stars twinkled like distant dreams, and she felt a surge of power coursing through her. This was her moment, her destiny unfolding before her. With her crew and newfound allies at her side, she would rise against the Council, not just as a queen seeking revenge, but as a beacon of hope for the galaxy. The time for action was upon them, and Eloria was ready to lead the charge into the unknown. The luminary glided through the void of space, heading toward the Galactic Council's stronghold. Eloria stood at the helm, her heart pounding with adrenaline. The air crackled with anticipation as the crew gathered around her, each member feeling the weight of the impending confrontation. The ship's lights flickered ominously, casting shadows that danced on the walls, mirroring the tension within the crew. Marek, Lyra, and the rest of the misfits exchanged wary glances, their pasts intertwining in a fragile tapestry of hope and fear. As the ship approached the stronghold, Eloria's powers surged within her, an undercurrent of energy that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. She could feel the ancient relic nestled against her chest, a talisman of her lineage and a conduit for her abilities. It pulsed with a rhythm that matched the urgency of their mission, a reminder of her purpose and the vengeance that drove her forward. The Council had wronged her, and today she would reclaim not just her family's honor but also her rightful place as the Solar Queen. The moment the luminary breached the stronghold's defenses, chaos erupted, alarms blared, and the once imposing structure transformed into a labyrinth of flashing lights and shouts. Eloria led the charge, her determination radiating through the crew as they navigated the corridors filled with guards and automated turrets. She wielded her newfound energy, harnessing it to disable security systems and create openings for her team. With each step, her confidence grew. She was no longer the girl from a forgotten planet. She was a force to be reckoned with. As they pushed deeper into the stronghold, however, the tide began to turn. The crew found themselves cornered in a vast atrium, the walls towering above them, lined with holographic displays of the Council's propaganda. Just as they thought they had the upper hand, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the chamber. Jax emerged from the shadows, flanked by Council enforcers, a sly smile curling on his lips. The revelation struck like a bolt of lightning. He had betrayed them. The sense of betrayal hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Eloria's heart sank as she realized the depth of his duplicity. Jax had infiltrated their ranks, feeding them false information, while all along he was working for the Council. The faces of her crew morphed from determination to disbelief. The bond they had forged was shattered in an instant. Eloria felt a surge of anger, a blazing fire that threatened to consume her. She had trusted him, had believed in his commitment to their cause. But Jax's actions were not just a betrayal. They were a calculated move against her very existence. Yet, she could not allow despair to take hold. Eloria felt the relic's energy course through her veins, amplifying her resolve. She had come too far to let this be the end. With a fierce determination, she activated the ancient relic, unleashing a wave of energy that enveloped the atrium. The air shimmered as the relic's power surged forth, incapacitating the Council's guards and sending them crashing to the ground. The energy pulse transformed the very fabric of the room, creating a barrier that shielded her crew from Jax's enforcers. In the chaos, Eloria confronted Jax, her heart a tumult of conflicting emotions: anger, betrayal, and a flicker of understanding warred within her. He had been an ally, a friend, and now he stood before her as an adversary. Jax's eyes glinted with something akin to regret as he revealed the truth behind his actions. He had not betrayed her for power or ambition. He had done it to protect her from an even greater threat, the Council's ultimate plan to eliminate her. As he spoke, Aloria felt the ground shift beneath her. The revelation rattled her to her core. The Council had orchestrated her family's downfall, not merely as a means of gaining control, but as part of a larger scheme to extinguish any potential threats to their rule. They had not just taken her family. They had sought to erase her very existence from the annals of history. With this knowledge, the weight of her purpose intensified. She wasn't just a girl seeking vengeance. She was the last hope for a galaxy oppressed by tyranny. Eloria's gaze hardened as she met Jax's eyes, the betrayal still fresh in her heart, but now tinged with a new understanding. This was not just about revenge. It was about justice. She needed to unite her crew and the rebels, to galvanize their spirits and fight against the Council's grip on power. With the relic's energy still coursing through her, she turned her back on Jax and addressed her crew, their faces reflecting a mix of fear and determination. In that moment, Aloria transformed from a vengeful queen into a beacon of hope. She rallied her crew, igniting their resolve as they prepared to dismantle the very structure that had oppressed them for so long. The atrium, once a symbol of the Council's power, became a rallying point for defiance. With the energy of the relic still radiating through the room, she felt the presence of her ancestors, their spirits guiding her as she took her place as the leader they had always intended her to be. As the crew regrouped, the atmosphere shifted. There was a newfound sense of unity, a bond forged in the fires of adversity. Together, they would rise against the Council. Aloria's heart swelled with determination as she felt the weight of her lineage settle upon her shoulders. She was not merely seeking revenge, she was leading a revolution. The Galactic Council would learn that the Solar Queen was not to be trifled with. With a crisp nod, Aloria signaled her crew to prepare for the next phase of their assault. They would not only fight for themselves but for the galaxy that had suffered under the Council's tyranny for too long. The echoes of her ancestors fueled her resolve, and she vowed to reclaim her rightful place not just as a ruler, but as a harbinger of change. As they charged forward, the luminary at their backs, Aloria knew that this was only the beginning. The confrontation with the Council had awakened something deep within her, a power that went beyond vengeance. She was ready to embrace her destiny as the Solar Queen, a leader who would unite the outcasts and bring hope to the oppressed. With her crew by her side, they would dismantle the Council's grip on the galaxy and carve a new path for the future. In the void of space, the stars shimmered brightly, a reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. But Aloria was no longer afraid. She had faced betrayal, uncovered dark truths, and emerged stronger. As they prepared for their final confrontation, she felt the energy of the universe align with her purpose. The Solar Queen would rise, and with her, a new dawn would break for the galaxy.